Okay, I admit it. I did something very out of character for me. I made an impulse buy. But you know, once the item arrived, I was actually quite happy with it. If you're interested in seeing what I bought, stay tuned. Okay, so let me explain. Some months back, I was on the internet and an ad came up down the side of my page showing a titanium wood-burning stove being sold by Aliexpress. And the only reason I paid any attention to the ad is because the stove looked virtually identical to the stainless steel Lixada stove that you quite often see on these ads. And the reason I was interested in the Lixada stove is because it appeared to be the same shape and size and basic design of the Emberlit stove. The difference being is that it had a number of holes in the bottom of the wood burning plate. And I wanted to see if there was any difference in performance between the Lixada and the Emberlit. But having the Emberlit, I just couldn't justify buying another stainless steel stove. So when the titanium stove came up and then I looked at the price, I realized it wasn't much difference in price from the stainless steel stove, plus I would have an ultralight titanium stove. So I made the purchase. It arrived a little while later, and when I took it, opened the package up and assembled it, I realized just what a quality item is. Of course, you know what happens next. More ads started appearing on the side of my screen with some other things that were very similar in nature and looked like they had promise, and at that point in time I had a little money that I could spend and I decided to purchase them. Alright, let me show you what I bought. Okay, so here is the wood burning stove. It comes under the brand name Tomshoo, and it appears to be identical in many ways to a lot of the other Chinese made products, and I suspect that they're all made either in the same plant or by other plants that are sharing the design around. And it looks identical, as far as I can tell, to the Lixada stainless steel one, except this one is in titanium. Now, I want to give you a comparison to the Emberlit stove. And there they are standing side by side, and boy, what a weight difference there is. But size-wise, now there on the bottom you can see in the Tomshoo Titanium stove the holes that I was talking about a minute ago. These appear in the Lixada stove, but of course they're not in the Emberlit stove. But you can see the similarities. One of the differences here, of course, is the size of the feed hole in the Tomshoo stove is much bigger than it is in the Emberlit stove. And I'm going to give you a close-up of these things in a second. But as I looked over the detail, I realized just how well Tomshoo did in copying, not only just copying, but maybe in some cases improving upon the design of the Emberlit stove. Alright, let me show you what else I bought, and then I'm going to show you the entire package and do some comparisons. So what came up next on my feed? Something else I'd been looking at for a while, but really just couldn't justify the price. One of the titanium 750 milliliter pots. This comes with the two swing-out canteen style or butterfly style handles on the sides and a bail built in. The lid with two strain holes, or vapor holes if you will, and a little ring on the top that stands up. This thing is exceptionally lightweight, and I'm going to give you all the weights and measurements for this in the show notes below. It does have graduated marks on the side. Now, one of the things I did learn about this is even though they call them 750 milliliter pots or 25 ounces, that means right to the top. Functionally, you can get about 600 before you start running out of room in terms of being able to put materials in it if you're trying to cook something or bring the water to a boil and not have it boil over. But still, 600 liters to 700 liters is a fair amount of fluid, and I can't tell you just how light this feels in hand. What came up next on my feed? Titanium alcohol stove. Now this stove you may have seen in other videos. I know Hiram Cook has done reviews of this. It is a titanium stove that is a clone of the Evernew titanium stove made in Japan. It is virtually identical in every way except one. The Evernew titanium stove has a wick inside underneath the feed jets that allows it to pull alcohol up and vaporize quickly, and the difference being is that when it'll come to a full bloom much quicker on the Evernew stove than it does on this. So this is a little bit slow, and I have played with this and I have had it and I've used it a number of times and done some tests with it, but let me tell you about that in a minute. But it came with the titanium crossbars as well, and that's all you need to function the stove right there, just those two items. And this also came up on my feed. Now that's all I bought. I didn't buy anything else, but I did put this together in a kit and I added a few things to it, and then I'm going to give you a comparison against some alternatives to this and some pricing. Okay, let me share with you the quick kit I put together and some options that I decided I could come up with, and give you some costs of each of the individual items, and then we'll compare it against some alternatives as well. So here again is the Tomshoo Titanium wood burning stove, and I paid $30 Canadian for this on Aliexpress, and that came with free shipping, and it arrived in less than 2 weeks. I don't think it was a week and a half before it arrived from China. So I was quite impressed with how quickly it came and how reasonable. The reason I thought that this was a good value is because the cheapest I could find, the Lixada stainless steel stove of the same design, is $22. So that's Canadian prices, of course. So for $8 more, I got a titanium wood stove. And I'm going to set that aside for a minute just so I can show you the entire system that I put together. Before I do, I should show you what it came with. So it did come in a nice little nylon sack, and it all folds down and comes apart identical to the Emberlit. The one thing I added to this specific stove is a piece of carbon felt, which has about a 1 ounce weight. And again, I'm going to put all the weights of all the items in the show notes below. And the reason I added this is because of those holes in the bottom of the stove, where I theorize that they're going to improve airflow and therefore improve the burn and efficiency of the stove. They do allow for a lot of hot coals to fall through. So in order to protect the ground and protect any fires that might start, or scorching it at the very least, I'm going to take this piece of carbon felt, and they just go together nicely, and it sits inside of the package nicely and adds virtually 1 ounce. So that's reasonable. So the other item again that I bought is the titanium 750 milliliter pot with the bail and the swing out butterfly handles. So you probably recognize this as something that a lot of people have bought and purchased and used, which is the Tomshoo Titanium. It is virtually identical. I'm sure that they're probably made in the same factory. If not, then they certainly share the designs across. It is identical. The quality is great. One of the things you might wonder about is just how stiff the titanium is. Did they cheap out on that? Not at all. There is some flex, but no more flex to this than there is to a stainless steel one. So it is a quality item for sure. And again, the third item that I purchased is the Tomshoo Titanium alcohol stove, and came with the titanium crossbars on it. Now let me show you how I'm going to set this up when I go to use it, and why I bought these three things together. Okay, so the concept was that primarily if there's no fire ban on, then I will use the wood stove as my cooking source, and the pot will sit on top, and it does come with the crossbars. It would not sit there without the crossbars on top, but because the pot is a little bit smaller, there should be lots of room for airflow and the combustion to be more complete in the stove. So this will sit on top, and that'll be my primary use. If fires are not allowed, or if it's just doesn't look like I'm going to be successful in getting a fire lit, or if it's under a fire ban such as we are right now, then I have the alcohol stove. And once it's lit, the pot goes on top and it works out very well. Now, what you may think is missing from this system is a windscreen, and you'd be correct, except I theorize that I can use the titanium wood stove as a windscreen for the alcohol stove. So I'll take the crossbars out, open up the front plate, and I theorize I can do this in a couple of ways. Likely, I'll just use 3 plates of the wood stove as the windscreen for my alcohol stove. So essentially, I could place the windscreen around the alcohol stove, or the wood stove as a windscreen around the alcohol stove, and put my pot inside on top of the alcohol stove. Now, when looking at this, I'm not positive this is going to work out just the way I want it to, because there does appear to be quite a bit of airflow underneath the stove on the front and sides, and as a result, whether or not that'll seriously affect the alcohol stove, I have not used this outdoors yet. I have used it a number of times, but not in this combination. Alternatively, I can flip the whole thing upside down. And now I have much better protection right here along the base. There are still some air holes here, but they're necessary anyway. You need some airflow. So this is how I theorize using this. I guess alternatively, I could put it back together with the plate in the stove and place the alcohol stove on top of that. And if I was able to support it from the side, that's as long as I remove this and don't take this. If I was able to support it on the sides, then I could use it like that. Now I say remove this, because once this is closed up with all 4 plates, this little pot will not go down inside. It'll want to sit on top. So it's just a little bit too small an opening with all 4 plates closed on for the pot, or the pot's just a little too big, either way you look at it. But this is the setup that I theorize using. Okay, let's talk about the additions I made to this. So in addition to the carbon felt for the wood stove, I had done some, looked at, well actually even before I purchased this, I decided to do a little look online to see what I could find, and of course the master Hiram Cook had done quite a number of videos comparing this against the ever-new titanium stove. And one thing that became apparent right away in his videos is that it takes quite a while for this to come to a bloom so you get the full efficiency of the stove. What he was able to do was to make that happen faster through the use of a priming plate. And a priming plate can be nothing more than, well, in this case I used a side cutter can opener to take the lid off of a can. I'm not even sure what it was. Tuna. It says right on it. Skipjack tuna. So that's all that is just the lid. And I would lay that down, lay the wood stove, or lay the alcohol stove on top of it, place a small amount of alcohol on the pan around the base of the wood stove, the remainder of the alcohol inside, or the wood stove, the alcohol stove, but the remainder of the alcohol stove, and light it. Now you do get quite a blossom around the base of this, but very quickly it heats the alcohol inside the alcohol stove and it comes to a full bloom much quicker that way. So that's how I get this to work more effectively. This added negligible weight to my setup. Yes, I know it's not something that came with it, but it works very effectively for that purpose. So the other thing I added was, well, let's say I added a little bit more alcohol than I needed to bring my water to a boil. What's my alternative? Let it burn out and waste that fuel, or see if I can snuff the alcohol stove out and reclaim that fuel. So I did experiment with a few cans, like tuna cans and small cans like that, to see if I could create a snuffer, and yes I could, but I decided to take it one step further, and I purchased a Trangia simmer ring. And the simmer ring of course works on the Trangia by opening the side up and allowing a variable amount of flame to come out, but in the closed position it's perfect as a snuffer. That means also that I can use this as a simmer ring for this stove as well. And I've tried that and it does work. Now what happens of course is when I start to use the simmer ring, then I have to find another way of supporting the pot over top of the alcohol stove, and I have options for that, but right now I'm using it primarily for a snuffer. Now here's one advantage that this titanium alcohol stove, the Tomshoo, has over the Evernew, and that is in reclaiming fuel. So very carefully, and it does take a little bit of practice, I can tip the, once it's cool of course, I can tip the stove and allow the alcohol to run out of the feed holes or out of the jet ports there back into my container. It's a little bit more difficult, actually it's considerably more difficult to reclaim the alcohol from the Evernew, because the Evernew has a wick like the Trangia does. So you're not going to be able to reclaim all the fuel, and you're going to have some remain in the wick. So when this burns out dry, and you don't have any fuel you have to worry about leaking into your backpack, because of course this does not have a lid that would seal it like a Trangia would. Okay, so that's my little setup. Now let's go back and look at some comparisons. Okay, once again, this is the Tomshoo Titanium wood burning stove. It cost me $30 Canadian with free shipping, and of course no taxes applied. It arrived from Aliexpress in about a week and a half. The weight of this is 7.5 ounces or 214 grams. It's just feather light. And again, the reason I bought this was because of the holes in the bottom plate. I wanted to see how they would perform in comparison to the solid floor plate in the Emberlit. And it was because of this design, which is identical to the Lixada, that I purchased it. By the way, the Lixada, the best price I could find for the Lixada stainless steel stove was $22 Canadian. So not a lot of difference, only $8 to get the titanium version. And I'm comparing that against my stainless steel Emberlit stove. And the stainless steel Emberlit stove, it weighs in at 13.4 ounces or 380 grams, almost twice as heavy. And can you ever feel the difference when you're holding them side by side? Right now, the Emberlit stainless steel stove is retailing in Canada at $63.25 plus tax plus shipping. By the way, if you're interested in knowing the price of the titanium version of the Emberlit, it is retailing in Canada right now at $99.81 plus tax plus shipping. So it is a heavier stove and twice the cost of the titanium stove. Not to say I don't like my Emberlit. Of course I still love my Emberlit. So let me put those two stoves aside. Okay, let's move on to the alcohol stove. So once again, this is the Tomshoo Titanium alcohol stove with titanium cross stand that it comes with. I paid $24.71 for this. It weighs in at 1.6 ounces or 47 grams. Now it is a little heavier because I did add the Trangia ring, which I paid $4 for, and the primer plate. So I would not have had to pay anything for this had I used a tin can that I could have cut off to the right size, and that is available to you as an option. So $24.71, free shipping, no taxes. I'm comparing that against one of the Trangia knockoffs. Now, the Trangia knockoff comes in at a weight of 3.8 ounces, so more than twice as heavy, or 108 grams. It sells for $15 right now, I can find it at, and the true Trangia comes in at $19 Canadian. So a little bit more expensive, not significantly, but a little bit more expensive than, or a little, I should say, a little less expensive than the titanium stove, but not significantly. But the weight is quite considerably different. So that doesn't even take into consideration the pot stand that you have to use with this. So I went with the simplest, lightest pot stand. Well, maybe not the absolute lightest, but certainly the simplest pot stand is one I made in a couple of videos ago, which I'll put a link for up above. So this wire pot stand goes with it. It cost me, well, virtually nothing. A couple of stainless steel skewers adds very negligible weight to it. All right, so that's my alcohol stoves. Let me put those aside. Okay, let's move on to the pot that I have. So the titanium pot, 750 milliliter pot with bail and butterfly wings cost me $29.40 Canadian. That's with free shipping, no tax. It weighs in at 4.4 ounces or 125 grams. Now this is where it became a little bit more difficult to do a comparison, because the closest thing I could compare this with is a GSI mug that I have that's also 750 mils. It also has the butterfly handles, and these are the longer ones. I actually prefer this type of a longer handle, but that's fine. Now, for this pot, it did not come with a lid and it did not come with a bail. So the bail is another one of those skewers, and I had to drill holes in the sides to make this work, and I can take the bail on and off, and I usually do when I'm transporting it as well. And the lid is one of those very inexpensive ones from China that will go on top, and I had to cut a couple of notches in this. So I can't give you an exact cost of this setup because I cannot find anywhere listed the 750 milliliter pot from GSI. But what I could find was the Pathfinder pot from Dave Canterbury's Self-Reliance Outfitters, and the Pathfinder pot and system, which appears to be identical as far as size and design. Of course, they don't use a bail. It doesn't come with a bail. They use a fish spreader, and they used a proper lid designed for that pot, which is more looking like the one that's on top of the titanium pot. So the Pathfinder one comes in at $30 American. So that's an American price, which I won't give you a comparison or the conversion on because I'm not sure what it is today, plus shipping to get it into Canada. So it adds significantly to the price of the package. Weight-wise, however, I can tell you that the titanium pot, I think I mentioned it, 4.4 ounces, 125 gram. My stainless steel GSI pot comes in at 6.8 ounces or 195 grams. Not a lot heavier, but it is heavier. So altogether they start to add up in weight. But this is still a good alternative. If you can find either the 750 pot from GSI or purchase the Pathfinder pot, and if you're looking for, in fact, a 750 milliliter pot, then it still makes a reasonable alternative. And the cost, well, okay, if you include the cost of $30 Canadian for this and $30 American for the Pathfinder one, then the costs are very comparable, a little bit more for the stainless steel Pathfinder one. Okay, so those are my cost comparisons. Let's just talk about the total package for a moment. Okay, let's just go over a few totals for the package weight and cost, because I think this is where you'll find it interesting. So my total cost for that titanium wood burning stove from Tomshoo, the titanium alcohol stove from Tomshoo, and the titanium 750 milliliter pot from Tomshoo cost me $84.11 Canadian with no shipping. That seemed to be a reasonably good price. A little bit more than I would normally pay, but I did say it was a bit of an impulse buy. So I have it, and now I appreciate what I have. But I'm comparing it against the Emberlit stainless steel stove, the GSI stainless steel cup, and the Trangia knockoff. So that combination right there would come in at approximately $115, and that's considerably more. That's quite a bit more money for that. But what about weights? Because this is also important, because that was the whole point, to see if I could create an ultralight outfit. Well, the comparison is not quite as much a difference as it is with the price. So for the titanium setup, it comes in at 1 pound, 1 pound even, or 457 grams. So 1 pound and a little, a fraction more. And that includes the cases that come with, some nice nylon cases, plus that piece of carbon felt, those extra accessories that I put with the alcohol stove. 1 pound. That's a really good weight for a complete cook set. Now, that's not including any alcohol that I would carry, because I didn't add that in, because it could vary from trip to trip depending on how big a container I put the alcohol in. For the comparable setup in stainless steel from the Emberlit, the GSI, and the Trangia knockoff, it comes in at 1 pound 9 ounces. So half again as heavy. Is that a tremendous weight savings? 1 pound between 1 pound 9 ounces? Not tremendous. If it hadn't been for the good price and the fact that I wanted to try that wood burning stove out, I would not have purchased this based on the weight difference alone. But I am quite happy with what I bought, and I think it is a good value, especially when you compare it against other titanium setups. So I did a little bit of research, and this is what I came up with. The Emberlit titanium stove at $99.81. The Tomshoo Titanium 750 milliliter pot, which is identical to this one, sells at $67.99. The Evernew titanium stove with a cross stand added comes in at $68.52. That's a total Canadian price of $236.32, compared with the $84.11 I paid. So if you're looking for a titanium setup, then it is well worth your while to look at the Aliexpress site to see the values and the deals they have there. Okay, I'm going to close this video up, but I just wanted to point out that this was a preview video. I have used the alcohol stove to heat water, and I've done some tests and experimentation with that. I have not used the wood stove yet because, of course, we're still under a fire ban here in Nova Scotia. But as soon as I get some experience with this in the woods, I'm going to come back and give you some thoughts. It could be that I don't like the titanium. I suspect I will, and from all the research I've done, titanium does seem to stand up very well to all the abuse that you would normally give a stove. So I expect this is going to work out very well, but that's one of those things. Only time will tell. So I will be getting back to you with some tests once I get out into the woods with the wood stove to see how that's going to work. But until that time comes, get out and explore. Take that path less traveled. It will make all the difference. Bye for now.